Hello again, Chris Lee and Alfred Ezman of Southeastern 14 here to react to our SEC tournament semifinal pairings, go over some action on Friday nights, and boy, was that interesting, and Friday afternoon for that matter. We'll get into that. We'll look ahead. We'll talk about NCAA tournament implications, all those things. Alfred, you were down in Hoover, my man. I was down there for the first couple of days. You've taken my spot in Hoover. What a really interesting day of baseball you saw yesterday.
Yeah, indeed. Shout out again if you're watching this and happen to be in Hoover, even just during the tournament, shout out to you. This event, it's my first time down there. This event's awesome. It's really it's for the fans, in my opinion, is what I've noticed.
Yeah.
It's for, everyone to kind of come and meet up and stuff. There's, the campground nearby, obviously, that people do. And so it was a great experience. But yeah, like you said, Chris, yesterday's games, big time matchups, and they delivered both of them. And we got some great matchups today, even better ones today, in my opinion, as well.
Yeah, I have not been down there every year, but I started covering the tournament in person in 2004. That was my first one. I don't think I've ever, I know I've never seen a bigger media presence down there than I saw when
Wow.
I was in Hoover. And I think the crowds have been about as good too. Now, sometimes you might get some bigger crowds,
Mhm.
if an LSU is involved or maybe an Alabama or Auburn or somebody like that. Mississippi State usually travels well. Ole Miss travels well when it's good. But I think even the lesser games, although I don't know what constitutes a lesser game anymore. We're going to get into national seed pairings here in a minute. And the SEC's got 4 of the top 5, according to D1 this morning. But I think that's the thing that stood out, that one, the media interest has never been higher. And I think even the crowds for all the games, from my experience, the turnout has been as good or better. Now, I haven't been the last couple of years, so maybe it was on par, but having not been down there since 2021, that's the thing that struck me while I was down there.
Yeah, that's awesome that the media is
Yeah,
down there like that. It's good for college baseball. Great for college
very
baseball.
good. Very good. Well, we start by reminding you we are presented by BetOnline, your number one source for all your summer sports this season, from MLB, golf, the NBA, and NHL playoffs. All the latest stats, news, and scores available to follow your favorite teams. Get the latest odds and lines, including the latest team matchups, player props, and odds on just about every game out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on all the action. Bet online where the game starts. All right, let's start in the afternoon session. Kentucky and South Carolina played a game that was just nip and tuck both ways. Hey, somebody finally found a way to keep Cole Messina from hitting home runs. That's just intentionally walk him. So they did that. Guess what? Carolina still won the game anyway. I think the big thing was the relief pitching. Parker
Hmm.
Marlott, you were texting me, was really good for South Carolina. He went 3 2/3 innings, struck out 6, allowed 1 run. Matthew Becker, who's been a veteran member of this Gamecock staff, went an inning and 2/3. I think a perfect inning and 2/3. Yes, it was, and got the save in that one. And they started with Dylan Eskew, who was a part-time starter for them, but not a guy who they extended a long period of time. And then Tyler Dean, who I was not even a guy I was that familiar with on that staff. But hey, hats off to South Carolina. If you can, in your fourth game, keep it together enough to beat Kentucky when you had some, well, tough luck offensively. We'll get into that just a
Hmm.
little bit. But I know Marlott was the one that really stood out to you. But what else did you see down there from the Gamecocks that kind of popped?
Yeah, they one good thing that I think they did, Kentucky very early on kind of went back. Not that they left it, but Kentucky went with their small ball way of playing, which is a lot of bunting, a lot of getting on, a lot of stealing, double steal plays. They'd send the runner halfway down third to distract the pitcher, that sort of thing. And South Carolina did not let it phase them, which was big. Um, like you said, what Kentucky did was they kept Cole Messina away, and that helps, I guess, a little bit. But even you got good hits out of a lot of other guys. That lineup's just been red hot. They're the best hitting team based off average this tournament, and I think it's slightly over 300 last time I checked. And they faced a tough pitcher as well. They had to start at least. They had Mason Moore
Yeah.
starting Kentucky. Mason Moore's a big control pitcher. one of the more winning pitchers in the league. I think at one point he still might have close to some of the most wins in the league. Guys like Hagen Smith might be higher, but he's
Yeah.
definitely up there. And just, I was really impressed with, how they were able to take advantage of the hits they got on the bases. I was looking, and that they're just, went up against some good relievers as well. The Kentucky in relief didn't pitch that bad. O'Brien and Cleaver were two of their relievers that were out there, and they went, I think it was 5 strikeouts I have and 3 and a third, which was very good for them. South Carolina had some errors as well, but Kentucky couldn't find ways to take advantage of that. A big story too, I think they kind of got South Carolina's offense going, was Gavin Casas had that big 3-run homer that sort of like, pushed South Carolina forward and got that momentum forward. Another big story from that game, Chris, you texted me and I saw it on the SEC network. He left the game with either a hand or wrist injury. SEC network said wrist. That's not good for the Gamecocks. He's a good power hitter for them. It's one of the guys they get their power from. So keep an eye on that heading into the regional next week. But yeah, I think South Carolina, they've been on a mission this tournament. They've hit the ball very well. They're getting good at the right time. They take down, I don't know, it wasn't today's projections for D1. They take down yesterday's D1's number 1 overall national seed.
Yeah.
And that's just a big deal for them. So, and they got a rematch against LSU because that game Thursday was, absolutely crazy. That was the best game this tournament, in my opinion. And we get to see it again very shortly at noon.
Yeah, I think the Casas injury for South Carolina would be pretty significant. He has not had the year that maybe he had a year ago and maybe they expected, but he's hit the ball a little better lately. It feels like to me he's a guy that can drive it out of the yard. We've seen him do that, I think, at least once in this tournament. No, they've got a little depth there, so they may be able to go to the bench and find an adequate replacement. But certainly that's not what Mark Kingston wanted. But yeah, I mean, I guess I didn't expect 11 hits between these two teams. I would have thought each team might have had 11 alone, given where they were with the bullpen. But what you mentioned with South Carolina, I think that's one thing that Mark Kingston's going to feel better about going forward is, hey, we got deep in this tournament and we just, we didn't run ruled or something. Not only that, we won the game with getting some good outings here and there. Now, I still think South Carolina is going to need to find more consistent starting pitching if it's going to make a big run in the NCAA tournament. But, this is an opportunity to reset and play on, and we'll see if they take some momentum from that. As for Kentucky, Ben Cleaver pitched yesterday. He's a kid from my neck of the woods, sort of, Chapel Hill, Tennessee, not the biggest place in the world. That's where my mom grew up, actually. Not a lot of people from Chapel Hill. Mike Minor's from there, who just finished his major league career last year. He pitched for the Reds and the Braves and some other teams. I think the Royals at one point. It was a first-round pick. And if you want to go way back, a guy named Claude Osteen that pitched for the Dodgers, I think, in the Koufax and Drysdale glory days. So a small town that is tiny but has produced some pitching. That may be
right.
one more we can add to the list. So there's your little fun fact you weren't expecting today. Mason Moore, I think for Kentucky, man, I want to see their starting pitching more consistent. Trey Poozer brought it this tournament, pitched really well. But you talked about Moore being a guy that's got a lot of control. He walked 5 guys yesterday. So I think for Kentucky, that's a thing that you want to see going forward is you want to see better starting pitching. And look, Kentucky will get to play in their park, which suits this team. And I think it'll be the seeding will be interesting because, as you noted, Kentucky got flipped in the top national spot with Tennessee. Now, I think metrically Kentucky's been better all along. And that's what the tournament committee usually goes by. If you're going best team, I think it's kind of hard to deny that to Tennessee at this point because they shared the overall title with Kentucky. If you go to a tie break, they win 2 out of 3, which is why they won 2 out of 3 against Kentucky in Kentucky's park, which is why Tennessee was the number 1 overall seed. Now Tennessee will go a game further than Kentucky. Tennessee's been ranked number 1 in the polls. Again, that's not always the way it works for the committee, but it was interesting to see, and we'll get to the Vols in here in just a second. Interesting to see that D1 had made the flip, and that's Mark Etheridge's call probably. to take the number one spot from Kentucky after yesterday's action.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, yeah, those two are definitely going to flip. And at this point, I think Tennessee kind of has it in their control. I mean, the number 3 overall right now is North Carolina. I've been watching the ACC tournament as well, just a tad. The games today, I think, are Wake Forest, Florida State, and then actually I had the D1 guys next to me up in the press box, and I was seeing what they were looking at and stuff, and they had that tournament on. I think it's Wake Forest, Florida State, and then North Carolina plays Miami, I believe, today. So good matchups as well in the ACC, and North Carolina might be knocking on the door, but as of right now, behind them is Texas A&M with the 4th spot. But as of right now, it's really in Tennessee's hands, and they kind of made that the case yesterday.
All right, speaking of the Vols, they get a win to advance to the semifinals. By the way, South Carolina will play LSU. We'll talk about that one in just a minute. But Tennessee, in one of the games of the tournament, beats Mississippi State. You were there in the park for that, 6-5. Mississippi State managed just 4 hits. That's because Tennessee's bullpen was just superb. Drew Beam was sharp early, then kind of lost his control. That opened the door for a big inning for State. But Aaron Combs, Andrew Binke, Kirby Cannell, and Nate Snead combined to shut down the Bulldogs from there. And the offense did just enough to get a win. Give me your immediate reaction from that one.
Yeah, the pitching matchup had some promise to it. Pico Cone was the guy the Bulldogs hadn't had a lot of this season, but I talked to Lemoyne after the game in the press conference, and he loves him, and he was really excited that he got to get out there, and they're going to make the NCAA tournament in some fashion at this point, so he's excited to see him going forward. Drew Beam as well. At some point, I thought he would have popped up this tournament, and here he is. Actually, threw no hits through 4, which was really, really interesting. The kind of tipping point of his start came when I think Tony was going to the mound, and the two in the Mississippi State dugout was saying something to some of the players. There was a little bit of a skirmish, nothing major. But I think I actually talked to Vitello after the game too, and he said one of the players called him Tony, so he was like, I just don't like being called by my first name by the opposing team, and I was like, that's very fair. And so that's what happened there, according to him. But that kind of shifted things. Drew Beam kind of got rattled a little bit. Connor Heisek, who's been unbelievable this tournament, delivered a big RBI knock to get some runs across. Dakota Jordan, who struggled mightily as well, he got a big RBI knock too. And, all of a sudden Mississippi State was back in it. And it just really, the Vols needed a lot out of their bullpen, and their bullpen produced big time, like you said. The people out there, Andrew Benke, Aaron Combs looked great. They combined for 6 strikeouts and 3 in the third. Kirby Cannell and Nate Snead sort of had like a combined save with one another, although statistically the save does go to Nate Snead. And I guess just hitting for the Vols late. Blake Burke obviously had that big home run late in the game. Cannon Peebles had a nice pinch hit where it was a fielder's choice that allowed someone to score. Then another run came across because Amani Larry threw the ball over first base. Although I will give Larry credit. He made some really good plays at second base today on the infield early on, which was nice to see from him. Before I get to Tennessee with Mississippi State, it was a really good tournament run. They really proved, that they can do some damage if they want to. I think this tournament, no matter where they get placed, they possibly could get, a host if they wanted to. That's what they're hoping for at this point. I think it'd be good for college baseball if they did. Obviously, with Duty Noble, the attention that would bring, all that sort of thing. But we'll have to wait and see on that. With Tennessee, they kind of put themselves in the driver's seat for the number 1 national seed, and it's really in their hands from here.
Yeah, I think for State, it was just, if you had said that they would get pretty much nothing from Hunter Hines. I think Hines went 0 for 16 or 0 for 17 in the tournament. He's a guy that I think we'll see playing in the majors. And Dakota Jordan is a kid who is probably going to be a first-round pick unless the late season slump is sort of wrecked that. Big power guy, both of them. And Jordan didn't get a hit, I think, until after that skirmish last night that he was a little bit involved in. And then he delivered probably the biggest hit of the game for Mississippi State. So maybe that's the thing that kind of got him going. But I think if you said Mississippi State gets all the way to Friday night without really getting anything from Dakota Jordan or Hunter Hines, you would have taken the other side of that bet. But baseball's a strange game, and Connor Hysack, as you pointed out, had a great tournament. Marshawn had some big hits for them, but State unfortunately dropped to 25 in the RPI this morning. And D1 baseball did not have State hosting. It had Mississippi State going to Terre Haute, Indiana, to face Indiana State, which would be, in my mind, a very winnable matchup. You could see Vanderbilt get sent there because that might be the closest proximate team that won't be hosting in the SEC. So that's what I'm kind of watching. Now, I think if you consider State a kind of bubble hosting team and S-curve this, which they don't, but if they did and they were to give you a more favorable draw, I mean, I think that's better than sending you to North Carolina or Corvallis or somewhere like that. So I'm really kind of watching that. It doesn't seem like Mississippi State is going to be hosting after last night. I'd have to look. Now, if they lean heavily on the KPI, and I'm going to pull that up right now, and give me just a minute to do that. That was the, what do you call it? I guess the kind of the offset that they're going to use. Is there a check against the RP? I guess is a good way to put it. State's only 12 there, which that puts them in hosting range, and Indiana State all the way down to 26. That is kind of the wild card. The consensus or the popular opinion, I usually lean on D1. Baseball America does a good job too. But when D1 says Indiana State's probably hosting, Mississippi State's not. Mark Etheridge, Aaron Fitt, Kendall Rogers, those guys have done this a long time. So I put some stock into that. Now, I think Mississippi State's the better team. But again, that's not always how this goes. For Tennessee, as we noted, that might have gotten the Vols the number one seed overall for the tournament. So there's that. And with that, let's go ahead and look forward. Let's start with Tennessee and Vandy. I'll be interested to see how the pitching goes for this one. For Vanderbilt, I'm not sure what they'll do. You could see Ethan McIlvain, who traveled. He's not pitched in a month, had a back injury, and was probably the most gifted of their freshman arms, and a guy who could pitch bulk relief out of the bullpen. He could close. He could maybe start. So I wonder if we'll see that today as we do this here on Saturday morning. And I don't know who else they've got. You probably see Miller Green, who pitched. Tennessee will be interesting because you saw Nate Snead start against Vanderbilt. He went last night in a closing effort. Now, he's a guy that I love because you can use him in multiple roles. When I like my relievers, I like them to be able to do different things. I mean, the Mariano Rivera one-out dominant closer is a special breed, but I really like a guy like a Nate Snead, who you can start him like they did. He can go for a short burst with that 100-mile-an-hour fastball, or he can give you more of a start out of the bullpen, 4, 5, 6 innings. So I don't know if burning him on Friday night will burn him for Saturday night, but we'll wait and see. I wouldn't be surprised if he made an appearance. It seemed like to me, and you were there, seemed like they ruled out Xander Sechrist for a start. He would usually be the guy, but Tony Vitello in the postgame on TV talked about him getting hot for the bullpen, and I thought, interpreting his remarks, sounded like Sechrist might not pitch against Vandy. Any idea where the Vols go on pitching matchups in the Saturday night game?
Yeah, I did like what you said about Snead, because usually the one thing they've done a lot of has been, you've seen this, they did that actually just against Texas A&M. They started Stamos and they use him for an inning or two, and then eventually there's something with a matchup they don't like or just something, and they throw in that game. They threw Causey in, which they've done a good bit, but they also have done it with Snead coming in and whatnot. So that's very interesting to see. I could see Snead going in based off of only going 2/3 of an inning yesterday. Even with I can't remember how much Causey pitched, but he could come back in too as well if he didn't pitch a whole lot. They could go many directions with this. I mean, it's just, we're gonna have to wait and see. My guess is with you, I'd go Nate Snead, but with Tennessee, they got to worry about, I think, try kind of not giving up the big runs they gave up last game against Vanderbilt. That's the biggest thing they had. I tried to get something out of Vitello out of what they're gonna do, and he was just like, "Oh, we're gonna rest, blah blah blah." I'm like, "All right, that's pretty boring, but I'll take it." But I think they'll go. I like the idea of them going with Snead after 2/3 of an inning, and And I don't know. I mean, I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But I would expect a lot of bullpen switching this game, just based off of the matchups they see, that sort of thing. And um, Kirby Connell late sort of has been the money shot. I know he only went a third yesterday and got recorded one out, but he's been the good and high leverage this tournament. He was that way against A&M in their first game, so expect him late as well. But Snead, I guess, would have to be my guess going into this game as the starter, but we'll find out later today.
Yeah, I don't know if they start Snead, it would be more of an opener situation, I think, than a start. He didn't go a lot of innings against Vandy. I'm going back 2 games ago. They went with Stamos. The Stamos Causey thing works for them because Stamos is a lefty and Causey's a righty. So I think that determines a lot of times where they leave off with Stamos and pick up with Causey. But Stamos went 53 pitches against A&M. That would have been on Thursday. Causey went 68. I'm going to guess neither of those guys come back, but we'll see. Kirby Connell seems like he can throw every day, but it's probably going to be in a short burst. My guess in looking at this, and I have no information, I bet you Dylan Loy gets the ball some. I bet you Matthew Dallas gets the ball some. I think both those guys threw against Vanderbilt, but I don't know that the pitch count was super high. And let me look that up as we're doing this. Loy threw 8 pitches, so he would be available. Dallas threw 20. I would think he would be available. I think it's somewhere along the lines of that. I think Binky would. I mean, this is a game where they're gonna have to piece it together. Probably. I don't know if anybody's going to throw more than 2 innings unless it's an out of the box guy that doesn't normally throw and just they get him on a heater and it's working and like, okay, we're gonna ride this till it goes out, which is what you often do in this spot. You see a lot of times in weekend games, somebody jumps up and gives you a great outing that wasn't much a part of what you did all year, just because that's where you are with your pitching. So anyway, that one will be interesting. I don't know if you picked up on anything with LSU and South Carolina, who they might use. I can't imagine South Carolina's got a lot left that's usable, but that one will be interesting. LSU's going to be a little fresher. LSU's pitching depth is I think it's got a lot more usable arms. Now, some of them are inconsistent, but you never know when a Christian Little or a Thatcher Hurd or somebody's going to pop up and have a good outing. I would think Hurd's going to be out of this one because I think he threw a lot of pitches the other day. I don't know. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, do you think has Luke Holman pitched this week at all? Have we seen any of
Holman
him?
had a no-hitter against Kentucky for about 6
that is right.
So
Yes. So they won't do him.
I'm going to guess you could see Cam Johnson. You could maybe see. I don't remember if Moffitt or Bucknam have pitched. Fidel Aloe has thrown some. Will Helmers is a guy that can throw. Justin Lohr out of Xavier, the lefty, who's kind of a rubber-armed guy for them last year. I think you could see him. I think it's Javin Coleman, a guy. I don't know if they threw him Cade Anderson or not. He was their weekday guy. I mean, they've got Sam Dutton. I can't remember if he's thrown. I mean, LSU's got 13 or 14 usable arms. So I think that this is the team that could go 7 or 8 guys and be okay and not bat an eye. Now, the question is, do you want to save some of those guys for the title game? Because you might not want to throw all of them. You might want to say, well, let's use this guy. We'll throw him 2 innings here if they've got a lead and save that guy for tomorrow. I think LSU seems to me like it's best suited with the number of arms going forward of all these teams.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. And that's kind of the key. I mean, we didn't say it yet, but it's just attrition at this point with what you have in your pitching staffs. Your lineups are hot or they're not. That's already set. But with these teams, that it just depends on what you have. And with like we said with Tennessee earlier, it's really a lot of their bullpen going out there, and LSU just has the depth overall to keep going. So that's going to be key going forward. And you're right with South Carolina. I'm looking at their roster right now. A lot of the guys I'm not as familiar with. They have Reese Markham, a freshman who's had promise a little bit they could go with. McCreary's already pitched. Javara Martin, I haven't seen him yet this week. Xavier Pelzer, those 2 guys are southpaws I haven't seen. So I don't know, it's a lot of guys who I'm either not familiar with or I've just heard of via Twitter talk that I'll see out of South Carolina. So that'll be really interesting to see today. But I'm hoping that matchup gives us what it gave on Thursday because I think that game was crazy, unbelievable. That LSU crowd was loud, and South Carolina stayed in it. I think you put South Carolina against any other opponent that day, and South Carolina wins that game. So it'll be very interesting to see what they do today as well.
Yeah, I'm trying to find D1's. Here we go. All right. Here's what D1's got as of this morning on post. Sorry, that was not a good segue. Here we go. Let's talk postseason NCAA tournament. D1 has got Tennessee hosting the Knoxville Regional, the number 1 overall seed of the tournament, playing Louisiana, Illinois, Sacred Heart. I think Tennessee and Illinois have already played this year in a series, which Tennessee swept pretty decisively. Kentucky, the number 2 with Nebraska, Cal, Northern Kentucky. I don't think bad draws for either of those teams. These are predictions. That's not how it's going to turn out, but just play along with me. Texas A&M hosting Texas, Lamar, Niagara. Again, I think that's a manageable draw for the Aggies. They're the number 4 overall seed. Arkansas hosting Louisiana Tech, Kansas State, Oral Roberts. So those are your 4 teams that are going to be national seeds. D1 has dropped Georgia to the number 9 national seed. Florida State, the 8, Oklahoma, the 7. Georgia playing UC Irvine, Georgia Tech, and Stetson, hypothetically. And then your 2 seeds, you've got, let's see. Well, I'll just roll down this in the order that they're listed going down the left side. Florida is in here as a 3 going to Chapel Hill, North Carolina to play North Carolina. South Carolina, the 2 in Clemson's regional. That's very predictable given geographic proximity. Alabama going to Norman to face Oklahoma as a 3. LSU is a 2 going to Florida State. That's not too big of a drive. That would be a fantastic regional, in my opinion.
Yes.
Maybe one of the better ones on the board. UCF in there too. That'd be a super regional.
Florida A&M even. Florida A&M it can really play this year. I've seen a lot of what they can do. So keep an eye out on
They
them.
played Florida a few times. Vanderbilt going to NC State to face, or going to Raleigh to face NC State as a 2. And Mississippi State going to Terre Haute. We mentioned that one earlier. I think that's all the teams that are going to be. I think that's the 11 if I've counted this right. And I'm trying to see their first 4 out. No SEC teams in the last 4 in. So this would indicate that the bubbles haven't burst for any of these teams. I think the only one that could at this point might be Florida, but that's how they size it up.
Yeah. Here every team's set. I pretty much think every team in the SEC kind of just has it in their control as of right now. I mean, or it's out of their control right now.
Yeah.
With the bubble and who they have. The bubble right now for those interested, last 4 in: James Madison, Kansas State, Georgia Tech, Cal. First 4 out: Georgia Southern, Troy, Northeastern, and Coastal. So it's really out of their hands at this point. Out of all these matchups, like you said, that Tallahassee regional looks very tough with the teams there. I'm trying to see what else. Alabama has a tough draw, I think, with Oklahoma and Dallas Baptist. Again, you're the 3 seed though, so I think you're going to get a tough more than likely either way. The Clemson South Carolina regional. Shout out South Carolina. It's a really good looking one. Clemson, South Carolina, College of Charleston, Samford. Samford's a good kind of mid-major team that sort of wiggles their way in and is competitive every year. College of Charleston's been unreal this season.
Yeah.
I'm trying to look at other ones. Arkansas, pretty favorable draw for them. I think they'll handle business there. Same thing. Oh, A&M did get Texas. That's awesome for that. So A&M, Texas, and College Station. That'll be a good atmosphere game out there in College Station. And then, that's pretty much it. I think really it's out of the SEC's hands. What happens? It's just up to the other teams. So everyone sit back and enjoy semifinal Saturday and championship Sunday.
We'll be here to break it down, the championship game, the pairings in the NCAA tournament. Alfred and I are starting to do our advanced research on the teams SEC teams might draw. So we'll bring that to you. In any case, for Alfred Ezman, I'm Chris Lee. We'll have more coverage coming at you from Hoover. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the like button to get it. Thanks for watching. We are Southeastern 14, presented by BetOnline.